well, you come highly recommended, and we're having the Shane Waldron conversation.
Right.
Obviously, people are super excited about it here in Chicago. People have a different view of him in Seattle. Do you think the Bears made a good hire here? Let's start at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shane's a really solid coach. I think he's a really solid dude as well. I'm really interested to see how he does in an environment where potentially he doesn't have as much maybe meddling, I guess is the word I would use. Pete Carroll was definitely known for being a meddler on the offensive side of the ball, whether it was Shane, Brian Schottenheimer before him, Darrell Bevel. A lot of times it would be a thing where things would work really, really well, and they would kind of empower these coordinators, and then there'd be a game or two where everything just kind of goes sideways, and then Pete would pull the rug and be like, hey, I don't like that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. Whether it was the let Russ cook stuff, otherwise other stuff under Shane. So seeing Shane be able to just go operate his system, especially if he's able to help choose who their quarterback of the future is, I think is going to be really interesting to follow.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Pete called him out after a game too, right? Hey, we need to get the ball to the tight end more. We need to use. He literally. I mean, the same thing happened here, by the way. Matty Bruce and Luke Getsy. We need to do this more.
Right.
So I mean, it was he made it public.
Yeah, I mean, Pete's not really known for doing that a whole lot. That's usually a thing that he does when he's especially ticked off, I guess, is actually kind of naming dudes or making that clear. But I mean, you look at this past season, it's just, and again, I don't know if this was Shane, I don't know if it was Pete. They didn't have an identity for their offense. Last year in 2022, they were known for 2-3 tight end personnel. They ran the ball a ton. They did a ton of play action. This past year, they draft Jackson Smith and Jigba 20th overall. Hey, we're going to do a bunch of 3 receiver sets. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And the offensive line stunk. They were really beat up. The interior of their line was like never the same for any game. Their 2 tackles missed a combined like 13 games. That's definitely a valid excuse. But when you look at it, there was no commitment to the run game. All this tight end stuff that they utilized in 2022 went totally out the window. It was just a totally different offense. And the other thing I would bring up is first half, those scripted plays, they were awesome at starting games. Once they got out of those first 15, 20 plays, however many it was, that's when you kind of saw the wheels start to fall off a little bit. And again, injuries to the offensive line, inconsistent run game, things of that nature, definitely played a role in that. But boy, it was interesting to follow.
You're triggering Bears fans right now because honestly, you're setting off a ton of red flags. I mean,
right.
What you just said, everything you just said there described the Bears last year's offense. Good script coming out the game. Bears are one of the best teams last year, the last 2 years, scoring on their opening drive, so much so that teams started wanting to take the ball to start the game just to keep the Bears, not having the ball. Bad in situational play calling. Not an emphasis, back to the Nagy days, no emphasis on running the football. So we've been through a couple play callers that have had similar issues here, and this is a question I asked to Nick, and this is what I want to pose to you. Well, Justin Fields is a guy that is going to beat you with his legs as much as he's going to beat you with his arms. Lamar Jackson's about to win his second MVP because of the dual threat ability he possesses. He might win a Super Bowl this year. And for a lot of Bears fans, we feel like, well, hey, if the right coordinator can get him right, he could be Lamar Jackson. You hear that from a lot of Bears fans. Well, how confident should we be that he's going to find that avenue, find that lane for Justin, if you're telling me that he gave up on running the football last year?
Right. And yeah, it's a really good question. And the running aspect, like from a quarterback thing, is so interesting because I think that was part of his appeal for leaving McVay with the Rams to come to Seattle. Was at the time, we didn't realize Russ was kind of washed, right? His first year in 2021 was the year that Russ finally got hurt. He broke his finger. He rushed his way back. He kind of stunk. You never actually saw what Shane was trying to do with a more mobile quarterback. Gino's not a more mobile quarterback. Gino can move, but Gino's one of those guys that's going to operate within the pocket. So we haven't actually seen Shane have that ability with a true dual threat guy like a Justin Fields. And I think if you're looking for the positive, I would look at 2022. Look at the Seahawks 2022 season. They were so balanced, 13th in yards, 12th pass, top 10 points, right? Those are kind of the things that I think Shane, at the end of the day, all 3 of these years really wanted to do, whether it was injury, whether it was Pete, whether it was this, that, or the other, in and out quarterback play in 2021. They weren't able to do that. That was a big part of it. And then this year, just for whatever reason, injuries notwithstanding, they just kind of got away from actually running the football with their backs.
Brandon, when you look back at this 2023 season for the Seahawks, if you had to identify a game for Bears fans to go watch to highlight what Shane Waldron does best, what game would you tell them to go look at?
This past season, week 2 against Detroit, they were awesome. That was the best game probably Geno played this year. If it wasn't that, it was Dallas. They played really close against Dallas in primetime. I know a lot of people saw that, and it's just, the defense was on the field for 11 drives. One of them was a kneel down, and the other one was CD Lamb dropped the wide open pass. Like, the defense wasn't stopping anybody that day. You probably could have passed for 400 yards that day. So those are 2 games, I think, this year that if you were looking at just like, hey, here's Geno really letting it rip. Here's Shane maybe at his best especially from a passing perspective. That's probably it. If you go back to 2022, there was a game against the Chargers. It was Kenneth Walker's first game really as the starting back. Rashad Penny had gotten hurt before that, and that was Ken Walker's kind of breakout party. That was another really, really good game for Shane in the run game and everything like that. You watch these games and you can see the McVay tree. You can see the success that they have, but then there are other games where it just looks like a completely different offense. And again, I don't know whether that's Pete. I don't know whether that's Shane getting in his own head and being like, oh, well, now the defense stinks. We need to go do this. Or, oh, we had 3 and out this last drive. We need to get it all back. I don't know how much of that is like a Pete versus Shane thing, but there are definitely flashes where you looked at them and it's like, man, this has the makings of top 5, top 10 offense. Absolutely. They just didn't always go that way.
Super chats coming in for you, Brandon. You're making us money. Keep on going here. If you like. $4.99 from Football CF Candy. Brandon, how much of Seattle's struggles in the red zone, more likely pass attempts, were due to O-line problems? Highest PFF grade was 58. CF Candy, we should pay you for these numbers. EPA high on first and second. Well, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, the O-line, again, Charles Cross was their first round pick in 2022. He missed basically 5 or 6 of the first few games. Abe Lucas, another standout rookie from their 2022 class, he missed more than half the season. The interior of the line was just mix and match. And I think also, again, the run game was just such a non-factor, even getting down to the red zone. It wasn't always like, hey, we're on the 3-4 yard line, we're going to pound it in. They're getting to the 8-9 yard line and they're not able to do anything. I'd also go back to the tight ends, and Shane Waldron, if you don't know, that was kind of his bread and butter. He was the Rams tight end coach before he was a pass game coordinator before he came up to Seattle. That was such a big part of their game this past year. And then this year, they'd give Colby Parkinson, who's 6'6" with go-go gadget arms, they'd give him a look. He had the game-winning touchdown against Tennessee. And it's like, where's that been? Why are you not utilizing this guy more in the passing game, whether it's red zone, whether it's to move the chains? So there's a lot of mix and match aspects of it. I just, for whatever reason, outside of DK Metcalf, it just didn't feel like they did a really good job getting their top playmakers involved. He was really the only guy I thought that kind of flourished this year on the offensive side.
So go ahead,
Greg.
Mark. No, it's okay.
You, Greggy, because
I think for me now, all right, we got our offensive coordinator, good on first down, good getting out the gates. He's got to get better on third down, got to get better in short yardage or red zone, running the ball. Okay, check. Who's going to be his quarterback coach? Because, is it Greg Olsen? I think a lot of Bears fans are hoping for that, the carryover from Seattle. For me, depending on what the Bears do here, I mean, Justin Fields still needs some developing to get to the level, we all think he's capable of. But if they also draft a quarterback, a lot of us have our eye on Caleb Williams. Drake May is also on the table. To me, this quarterback coach is such an essential hire because, Shane Waldron's going to have his hands full doing everything else we've just discussed. We need a guy in here that's sole focus is to, be in, this quarterback's pocket and elevate him to a level that we've never seen here in Chicago at the quarterback position.
Yeah, Greg is obviously a veteran guy, been around a long time, really, really well-liked, well-respected. We only had him for the 1 year up here, and that's because for a long time, Seattle's quarterback coach was Dave Canales, who's obviously been doing great things with Tampa Bay this past year as their first-year OC. So Greg would make a lot of sense, especially being kind of that older guy. Waldron is still one of those kind of younger offensive-minded coaches. Shanahan tree working with McVay, having kind of that older, maybe not grizzled, because I don't think Greg really comes across as a grizzled guy, but having that, again, like that kind of older veteran presence to pair with Waldron and whoever that young quarterback is, whether it's Fields, Caleb, Drake May, whoever, I think definitely makes a lot of sense. Basically, it sounds like Seattle's whole coaching staff is going to turn over. The whoever this new coach is basically going to bring in all their guys. They told everybody at the offset, like, hey, go interview for jobs. We're not going to stop you. We're not going to block you. So I think Greg got a few looks for offensive coordinator as well. But if he doesn't land anywhere, I think he'd be a really, really good fit, just being that veteran presence with that kind of experience to pair with Shane.
I mean, you basically just answer it, but Kevin O'Reilly, $4.99. Anyone who you see following Shane to Chicago, fingers crossed that guy would be better than Getsy bringing along Lucas Patrick. Do you how would you add on to that part?
Yeah, he's asking for personnel-wise players that would come over from Seattle.
Yeah, they don't have a ton of free agents hitting the market this year. Obviously, with the new coach and whatever, and they're kind of right up against the cap. You could obviously see some guys move on, but I know we've kind of talked a lot about tight ends, but Noah Fant, who obviously is well-known, former first-round pick. He was a big part of the Russell Wilson trade. He and Colby Parkinson are both hitting free agency. Those would be two guys, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigbo. Those guys are all going to stay put. Their two running backs are in their first or second year this past year. I look at the tight ends, definitely, especially because that's just kind of Waldron's background. I think Colby Parkinson is a guy who, being 6'6", 6'7", long, really physical. He gained a lot of weight. He's been a much better blocker. He was always just kind of put into that number 3 tight end role, having him as an actual passing aspect of your offense. And again, whether it's Fields or whoever these guys are, I mean, having a guy that's 6'6", 6'7", whether it's red zone, first downs, whatever it is, like, that's a really, really intriguing thing. And it was always really surprising that they never put him on the field more.
Well, I think, we're planning on, drafting a bunch of future Hall of Famers at our skill position stuff. So Brandon, I think what we're really looking at is, Evan Brown, the center. We had a tough time at center. I know you guys have a couple guards that might be available. You said the offensive line play wasn't good. So should we be steering clear of the center, Evan Brown, coming over from Seattle? Because we need the bar of being better at center in Chicago is pretty low.
No, Brown's solid. Brown was one of the few guys that was kind of, I think he played 14 or 15 games. He only missed a little bit of time. I think the guard play was a lot worse. Phil Haynes was kind of their starting right guard. He ended up missing out the season. I'd probably steer clear of Phil Haynes, but I mean, Evan Brown, especially being a guy that has a lot of NFC North experience, he came from Detroit this past year. I could see that making a lot of sense. I mean, you could do a lot worse at center than Evan Brown. I think, is he going to be a top 10 center in the league? No, but he's not going to be bottom 10. He's just a really solid middle of the pack center. And it can also play some guard for you too. He did play a lot of guard. So, I mean, if you like him more at guard, he's somebody that I think is going to have a pretty decent market this year.
For the record, this is what they sold us with Lucas Patrick coming with Luke Getsy from Green Bay. And then we proceeded to drive him to the airport here this offseason. Go ahead, Nick.
Brandon, I mean, we're hearing like these mixed results with Shane and what he can provide as an offensive coordinator. And you said he was solid, but what is your gauge of what the Seahawks fan base is kind of thinking with him moving on? I know a lot of the coaches are now just going and looking for jobs, but what is it like if you had to summarize Shane Waldron, good, bad, just solid? Is that really what it comes down to?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's middle of the pack, but it's more good than bad. Because again, when it was really humming, it was really, really impressive. And there were a lot of things, especially this past year, that kind of did work against him. I think a lot of times with offensive coordinators that are on the way out, whether they're getting fired or going somewhere else, I think a lot of people would use the word polarizing. Like, Shane wasn't polarizing, because I think people, especially because Pete was here for 14 seasons, like, people kind of knew that at some point Pete was going to step in for better or worse. And I think that a lot of times these past 3 years, we did see that. So, I don't think it's a thing where people are like, oh no, we don't have Shane Waldron anymore. Like, what a loss. But it's not anything where I think the majority of the fan base or people that follow the team are like, oh, thank God, or good riddance. Like, that guy's gone. I mean, I think he's just a really solid offensive coordinator who, if he's able to kind of just instill what he wants to do and not feel like he's going to get undermined at the drop of a hat when like one little thing goes bad, I think that he's someone that can do really, really well in this league long term.
All right, just picking under rocks for 5 more seconds here with you, Brandon. The Geno Smith became the comeback player of the year because blank. How would you fill that out?
They ran the ball really well. They ran the ball really well and used play action. And Geno is another one of those guys who I think really thrives in play action. Even this past year, I think that the only guys that were better on play action than Geno Smith were Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, if I'm remembering right. He was top 3, top 5 play action, straight dropbacks. He was like bottom 5. And again, that's something Shane wants to do and has wanted to do. whether it was him or Pete or by design, whatever it was, they got away from that a lot this past year. But again, if Shane Waldron is getting that run game going and actually utilizing play action, that offense really, really clicks at a high level.
In a press conference, last one, Berg. In a press conference, Shane Waldron is blank.
He's forthright. He's blunt. He's not someone like we have a whole thing where we would call it parsing Pete, because Pete would say one thing and it's like, what does he actually mean by that? I mean, it was a whole thing. It was like, okay, let's read between the lines. You're like, oh wait, he's actually really mad at this guy if we think about it from this perspective. Shane's not that. Shane's pretty open, honest. He's not somebody that's gonna throw guys under the bus and tell it how it is in that sense, but he's just gonna be like, yeah, I mean, we were 28th in rushing last year. That's not good enough. It starts with me. He's that kind of guy. He points the finger at himself. Like, he's not somebody that's going to throw anybody under the bus. But yeah, press conference, he's not going to be like some mystical guy like Pete where you're trying to figure out what he's actually trying to say.
All right, so you're out of Washington, University of Washington, and
Yes, sir.
we talk so much about the number 1 pick here in Chicago that I think a lot of Bears fans forget we also have the number 9 pick. How much excuse me, how much of a home run would Rome Odunze be for the Bears at 9?
Oh my God. Rome is so good, man. Rome is one of the craziest college guys I've ever seen in my life, because if you just go watch these games and watch his highlight tape, 80% of his catches are contested. Like, this guy's a contested catch god. He's 6'3", he's 215, 220. He's going to run high 4.3s probably. And I think it was something where 75-80% of his catches were either for first downs or touchdowns. Like, that's all the guy did was move the chains. And whether it was, on screen passes, whether it was those contested 50-50 balls, like, he would be at 9. If he's there, that's a home run, man. I mean, you pair that guy with DJ Moore, you're having 2 legit number 1 type receivers for Caleb, for Drake, for Justin, whoever that guy is. And yeah, at 9, I don't think he's going to get to 9 personally, but if he was there, I mean, I would be running that card in really fast.
Brandon, would you say too for Shane Waldron to run his offense the way he wants to, that he needs a big X receiver like a Rome Odunze? You saw DK Metcalf, and you have some obviously Jack Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, but do you think that would obviously help what Shane Waldron wants to do, having a big X receiver like that?
I mean, it helps for sure. I don't think it's some super necessary thing, because there were times, less so this year, but more so the first 2 years that he was here, where a lot of the offense ran through not just the tight ends, but Tyler Lockett, right? Like, so it doesn't have to be, that big traditional X type receiver. It's super nice to have a guy that's 6'4" and 240 and runs 4.2, 4.3. But it's, would I say that that's like a necessary aspect to his offense? No, but it's definitely a nice luxury to have that guy that can actually like kind of be big and stretch the field and go after those 50-50 balls.
One last one real quick, Carm. I'm sorry. Gosh dang, Lawrence is going to kill me. One last one, because I'll be remiss if I don't attempt to push my Caleb Williams agenda that Bears fans think I'm trying to do on this show. But you are a Pac-12 guy,
right?
Washington fan. You told us so much here about our new offensive coordinator. So I'll ask you, do you think Caleb Williams is a good fit for the Bears and with Shane Waldron, or would you stick with Fields or draft Drake May?
I'm low on Drake May, and I'm sure that Chicago fans are probably not super thrilled about the prospect of another UNC quarterback after Mitch Trubisky. So
it would be terrifying.
But no, I mean, I think Caleb being a guy that can move a little bit, like, is Caleb a scrambler? No, but Caleb's a guy that throws well on the run, manipulates the pocket. I do think that's a part of the game that Shane really does want. I love Justin Fields. I'm a big Justin Fields guy. Just because you have the number 1 pick, I don't feel like you have to move on from that guy. I think that of the two, just kind of on the surface, just because I haven't seen Shane actually work with a true running quarterback, I would think that Caleb's probably the better fit. And I also understand probably wanting to get that contract just because it is obviously cheaper for longer, and that can definitely help you in the short term. I don't think that Justin's a bad fit, but I think just kind of based on a lot of the stuff Caleb did at USC and then what Shane has done these past 3 years in particular, I would probably lean him having the edge over Justin just from a fit perspective.
Okay. SeattleSports.com, at Seattle Sports, at the B Gustafson, if you want to follow Brandon on Twitter, because you should. Hit the like button for him too. This has been a great time talking to you here, Brandon. Last one. Offensive coordinators, they come to Chicago. with the exception of Adam Gase, who didn't die immediately. They come here to die. That's what we do. It doesn't end well. You don't, there is no elevator to the top floor and being a head coach. Very, very rare, with the exception of Gase. Do you think that Shane ultimately is going to be a head coach in the NFL?
I do. And whether, I think a big part of that too is just teams are they're so hung up on the idea of like, hey, we need to find that young offensive guy. And there was the years where it's like the Cliff Kingsbury press release that's like, he's friends with Sean McVay, right? Like that still does hold water a little bit. I think him coming from the Shanahan tree, he coached under Mike in Washington for a few years and then working under McVay, I think that will help him a bit. I think that this year took a little bit out from under that because Seattle's offense was so inconsistent and the run game kind of went away. But entering this year, I mean, I don't think he got any head coaching interviews last year. At least I don't remember, but he was someone who kind of entering this year, a lot of people thought he was kind of working his way up there. So I think at some point he does definitely get a look. I think there's enough kind of going for him that at some point he'll at the very least get some strong consideration.
Brandon, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you making time. I know there's always a zillion offers out there to do these things. So it can
yeah, we really appreciate it. Good
Hey,
stuff.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.
Yep. Be good, Brandon. Thanks a lot.
We all silly like the mayor.